The judgment of fools, the great assembly of worlds, stretched across space like a metallic flower blooming in the darkness. Its crystalline spires caught starlight and bent it into rainbow patterns that danced across the hull of the Earth vessel Determination. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at the viewport, watching the massive station grow larger as they approached. She had served in Earth's military for 15 years, but this was her first time seeing the center of galactic civilization. Impressive, isn't it? Ambassador Marcus Chun joined her at the window, adjusting his formal diplomatic robes. The older man had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for over a decade, and his face carried the weight of countless negotiations. It's beautiful, Elena admitted, though something about the station made her uneasy. But it feels cold somehow. Marcus nodded knowingly. That's because it wasn't built for creatures like us. Every angle, every proportion, every detail was designed by minds that think differently than we do. Sometimes I wonder if they built it to make visitors feel small. Dr. Sarah Okafor approached from the ship's laboratory section, carrying a datapad filled with her research notes. As Earth's leading expert on alien cultures, she had spent years studying the various species that made up the Galactic Council. Her dark eyes were bright with excitement despite the serious nature of their mission. The docking bay assignments just came through, she reported. They've placed us in Section 7 with the other minor species representatives. Elena froned. Minor species? Earth has over 8 billion people and colonies on 12 worlds. Numbers don't impress them, Sarah explained patiently. The Korthak Empire spans 300 star systems. The ethereal collective exists in dimensions we can barely comprehend. To them, we're still newcomers who barely understand the universe. Their ship shuddered slightly as the docking clamps engaged. Through the station's transparent aluminum viewports, Elena could see other vessels from across the galaxy. Sleek Korthak warships that looked like flying insects. Ethereal collective vessels that seemed to be made of pure light. Massive Granite Confederation ships that resembled floating asteroids. Each one represented a civilization far older than humanity. The airlock hissed open, and Elena got her first taste of the station's atmosphere. It was breathable for humans, but carried strange scents that reminded her of ozone and flowers she couldn't identify. The artificial gravity felt slightly heavier than Earth normal, and the lighting had an odd quality that made everything seem slightly unreal. "Welcome to the Great Assembly," said a mechanical voice from a floating translation device. The speaker was a Korthak, one of the insectoid species that handled most of the station's administrative functions. Its compound eyes glittered as it studied the human delegation. "You will proceed to waiting chamber 17 until the High Council is ready to hear your petition." Elena noticed how the alien's tone was dismissive, almost bored. This was supposed to be an important diplomatic meeting about humanity's expansion into new star systems, but they were being treated like minor supplicants asking for a favor. The waiting chamber was austere and uncomfortable, clearly designed for species very different from humans. The chairs were too tall and narrow, the temperature was slightly too cold, and the lighting hurt Elena's eyes after more than a few minutes. It felt deliberately unwelcoming. "This is insulting," Elena whispered to Marcus as they waited. "We're representing 8 billion people, and they stick us in a room that feels like a storage closet." Marcus placed a calming hand on her shoulder. "Patience, Captain. Diplomacy requires enduring small humiliations to achieve larger goals. Earth needs those expansion rights. Our population is growing too fast, and our current colonies are reaching capacity. Hours passed before they were finally summoned to the main council chamber. Elena had visited cathedrals on Earth that felt less imposing than this space. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, and 12 massive thrones were arranged in a circle around a small platform where petitioners could speak. Each throne was designed for a different alien species, and most were occupied by beings that challenged Elena's understanding of what life could become. High Arbiter Zexthal of the Korthak Empire dominated the center throne. His species looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a spider, with four arms ending in razor-sharp claws and compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. The human delegation will present their petition, he announced, his words echoing through the vast chamber. Marcus stepped forward onto the speaking platform, his voice steady and professional. Honored members of the council, humanity comes before you today seeking permission to establish colonies in the Kepler 442 and Kepler 452 systems. Our surveys have confirmed that both systems contain habitable worlds with no intelligent life. Our growing population requires new worlds to ensure our species' continued prosperity. A sound like breaking glass filled the chamber. It took Elena a moment to realize that several council members were laughing. The sound was alien and disturbing, carrying notes that human ears weren't designed to process. Counselor Veltar of the Ethereal Collective spoke next. The being was pure energy contained within a crystalline form that constantly shifted colors. When it communicated, the words seemed to appear directly in Elena's mind rather than coming through her ears. Humans, Veltar's mental voice carried clear disdain. You speak of prosperity, but your species has existed for mere moments in galactic terms. You have barely learned to travel between stars, yet you demand the right to spread across the galaxy like some biological infection. Elena felt her jaw clench. She had fought pirates in the Outer Rim, commanded ships through hyperspace storms, and faced death in service to Earth. She wasn't going to stand here and listen to humanity be described as an infection. The insults continued. Arbiter Quandris of the Silicon Syndicate, whose species looked like living rock formations, declared that humans were too violent and unpredictable to be trusted with new worlds. The representative from the Hive Confederation, a collective consciousness that spoke with 1,000 voices in perfect unison, suggested that Earth should focus on learning civilization before seeking expansion, but it was High Arbiter Zexthal who delivered the cruelest blow. He stood from his throne, his four arms spread wide in a gesture that Elena somehow understood was meant to show dominance. The Council has reviewed humanity's petition and finds it lacking in merit, he announced. Your species demonstrates all the worst traits of primitive biology: aggression, territorial expansion, and inability to coexist peacefully with other forms of life. You wage war on your own kind, you consume resources without regard for sustainability, and you show no respect for the wisdom of elder species. Marcus tried to interrupt. Honored Arbiter, if we could discuss specific terms. Silence. Zexthal's screech was loud enough to hurt Elena's ears. The human species will be confined to your current territories. No new colonies will be permitted. Your existing settlements beyond the Sol system will be evacuated within 1 standard year. Any human vessels found in restricted space after that time will be destroyed without warning. The chamber erupted in sounds of approval from the various alien species. Elena felt something cold and hard settle in her stomach. This wasn't just a rejection of their petition. This was a declaration that humanity had no future among the stars. Furthermore, Zexthal continued, the Council hereby classifies humanity as a Category 7 restricted species. You will submit to regular inspections to ensure compliance with galactic law. Any signs of military buildup or unauthorized expansion will result in immediate sanctions. Dr. Sarah stood up from the observer section, her scientific training overriding diplomatic protocol. Category 7? That classification is reserved for species that pose an existential threat to galactic civilization. Humanity has never attacked another species or violated any interstellar laws. The laughter that followed was even more cruel than before. Veltar's mental voice dripped with condescension. Child, your species' entire history is written in blood. You wage war constantly, even against your own kind. In the mere century since you developed spaceflight, you have established military bases on every world you inhabit. Your literature and entertainment glorify violence and conquest. You are exactly the kind of species that the Galactic Council exists to control. Elena had heard enough. She stepped forward, her military bearing evident in every movement. With respect, Counselor, You seem to know very little about humanity despite all your studies. Yes, we have conflicts. Yes, we compete and sometimes fight. But we also sacrifice ourselves for strangers. We create beauty that has no practical purpose, and we never stop trying to improve ourselves. Every species in this chamber has done terrible things in their past. The difference is that we don't pretend to be perfect.
The chamber fell silent. Elena realized that no one had ever spoken to the council like this before. These beings were used to absolute deference from lesser species. The idea that someone might challenge their judgment was clearly shocking to them. High Arbiter Zexthol's compound eyes fixed on Elena with unmistakable hatred. Captain Vasquez, is it? Your military records make for interesting reading. 17 confirmed kills in combat, including 3 sentient species during piracy suppression operations. You embody everything that makes humanity dangerous. Elena felt her face flush with anger. Those kills had been in defense of civilian ships under attack by raiders. She had taken no pleasure in them, and each one still haunted her dreams. To have them used as evidence of humanity's unworthiness was beyond insulting. Those pirates were murdering innocent people, she said coldly. I would do it again without hesitation. Exactly, Zexthel replied. Violence is your first instinct, your solution to every problem. This is why humanity cannot be trusted with expansion rights. Ambassador Marcus placed a restraining hand on Elena's arm, but she shook him off. Something was burning inside her chest, a fire that had been building throughout this humiliating session. You want to talk about violence? Elena's voice carried to every corner of the vast chamber. Let me tell you what I see here. I see 12 species who achieve dominance through conquest and expansion, just like you claim humans do. I see beings who have carved up the galaxy among themselves and refuse to share with newcomers. I see a council that makes decisions based on fear and prejudice rather than justice or wisdom. The alien council members shifted uncomfortably. Elena was saying things that weren't supposed to be spoken aloud, truths that the galactic order was built on pretending didn't exist. But most of all, Elena continued, her voice growing stronger with each word, I see the biggest mistake you'll ever make. You think you know humanity. You think we're just another primitive species that will quietly accept your judgment and fade into obscurity. You're wrong. High Arbiter Zexthel rose from his throne, his 4 arms spread in an unmistakable threat display. Are you threatening the Galactic Council, human? Elena smiled, and there was something in that expression that made several council members step back from their thrones. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that would change everything. Not threatening, Arbiter. Just making an observation. Humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and every other disaster our world could throw at us. We've climbed from caves to starships in less time than most of your species need to decide what to have for breakfast. We adapt, we overcome, and we never, ever give up. She turned to address the entire council, her voice carrying absolute certainty. You've just made the worst enemy you could possibly imagine. Not because we're violent, but because we're something much more dangerous than that. We're stubborn. The human delegation left the chamber in silence. Elena could feel alien eyes watching them go, but she didn't care. The council had made their position clear, and now humanity would make theirs. As they walked back toward their ship, Dr. Sarah whispered urgently to Marcus and Elena. We need to talk privately as soon as we're aboard. There are things about this situation that don't add up. Things the council didn't want us to know. Once they were safely in the ship's briefing room with the doors sealed and privacy screens activated, Sarah activated her datapad and projected a series of charts and graphs into the air above the table. I've been analyzing the council's behavior patterns and comparing them to known psychological profiles of the various species, she explained. Something about this whole session felt orchestrated, like they had already decided what they were going to do before we ever arrived. Elena nodded grimly. It felt like a trial where the verdict was already decided. Exactly. But here's what's really interesting. Sarah manipulated the projection to show a timeline of recent galactic events. In the past 5 years, there have been 17 accidents involving human colonies and installations. Cargo ships disappearing, communication relays failing. terraforming equipment malfunctioning. The odds of this many random failures are essentially zero. Marcus leaned forward, his diplomatic training making him quick to understand the implications. You're saying they've been sabotaging us? I'm saying that the evidence suggests a coordinated campaign to limit human expansion and development. They didn't just deny our petition today. They've been working to ensure we would never be in a position to petition successfully.
Elena felt that cold fire in her chest grow brighter. They've been at war with us for years, and we didn't even know it. Sarah nodded. There's more. The Category 7 classification they assigned to humanity? I researched the historical records. It's only been used 3 times before, and in each case the classified species was completely destroyed within a decade. The briefing room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about expansion rights or diplomatic humiliation. The Galactic Council had essentially declared humanity's extinction. Elena stood up, her decision made. Then we better make sure they regret it. As the Determination undocked from the Great Assembly Station and began its journey back to Earth, none of the alien council members noticed the small probe that detached from the human ship's hull and disappeared into the station's superstructure. They were too busy congratulating themselves on putting the dangerous humans in their place. They had no idea that humanity's real response was just beginning. Elena stood at the viewport one last time, watching the station shrink into the distance. In a few hours, they would be in hyperspace carrying news of the Council's ultimatum back to Earth. She wondered how long it would take the aliens to realize they had just signed their own death warrant. Captain, Marcus joined her at the window. What do we tell Earth? Elena's reflection smiled back at her from the transparent aluminum. We tell them the truth, Ambassador. The galaxy thinks humanity is too dangerous to be allowed to expand. She turned away from the viewport, her decision crystallizing into absolute certainty. They're about to find out they were right. The fire awakens the underground facility beneath the Colorado Rockies had never appeared on any official government document. For 30 years, it had been humanity's most carefully guarded secret, buried 2 miles below ground and shielded from every form of detection known to science. General Patricia Stone stood in the command center, watching dozens of screens display tactical information from across the galaxy. At 62 years old, she had devoted her entire adult life to preparing for this moment. Ma'am, the Determination has just cleared the hyperspace barrier, reported Commander David Park from his position at the communications console. Captain Vasquez is requesting immediate priority connection to Project Phoenix Command. Patricia nodded grimly. She had been expecting this call ever since the diplomatic mission departed for the Great Assembly 3 weeks ago. Earth's leaders had hoped for peaceful expansion, but Patricia had known better. She had studied the alien species for decades, analyzed their psychology and motivations. The Galactic Council would never willingly share power with humanity. Put her through on the secure channel, Patricia ordered that Elena's face appeared on the main screen, her expression a mixture of anger and determination that Patricia recognized immediately. It was the look of someone who had finally seen the enemy's true face. General Stone, I'm transmitting our full mission report now, Elena said without preamble. The short version is that they not only rejected our expansion petition, they declared humanity a Category 7 restricted species. We have 1 year to evacuate all colonies beyond the Sol system or face military action. Patricia had expected rejection, but the Category 7 classification was worse than her darkest predictions. Any evidence of the sabotage operations Dr. Okafor suspected? Confirmed. Sarah found patterns in their database that prove deliberate interference with our colonies over the past 5 years. General, they've been at war with us since before we knew it was happening. Patricia looked around the command center at the faces of the men and women who had spent decades preparing for this possibility. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, and strategists who had sacrificed normal lives to build humanity's secret defense. Each one of them had known this day would come. Captain Vasquez, how long until you reach Earth? 18 hours at maximum speed. Good. Report directly to me when you arrive. Do not speak to anyone else about your mission until we've had a full debriefing. Patricia paused, knowing that her next words would change everything. Captain, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. Project Phoenix is no longer a contingency plan. As of this moment, we are at war. Elena's eyes widened slightly, but her voice remained steady. Understood, General. What are your orders? Survive the trip home. Captain, everything else can wait. As the transmission ended, Patricia turned to address the command center. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had trained for this moment her entire career. Ladies and gentlemen, the Galactic Council has declared their intentions. They want humanity confined to a single star system, reduced to a collection of primitives who pose no threat to their empire. They have severely underestimated what they're dealing with. She activated the facility's main display, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots marked known alien military installations, trade routes, and population centers. Blue dots showed human colonies and ships. To any outside observer, the blues would seem hopelessly outnumbered. Dr. Torres, what's the status of our special projects? Dr. Michael Torres, a thin man with prematurely gray hair, stood up from his workstation. As the facility's chief weapons researcher, he had spent 15 years developing technologies that officially didn't exist. All Phoenix technologies are ready for deployment, General. The quantum disruptor warheads can phase through any known shield technology. Our gravitic manipulation systems can create artificial singularities or reverse gravity wells. The nanoplague biological weapons are tailored for each of the major alien species. Patricia nodded. And our fleet status? Commander Park consulted his tactical display. Operation Ghost Ship has been active for 12 years. We currently have 473 stealth vessels positioned throughout Council space. Each one has been operating under complete radio silence, powered down, and invisible to alien sensors. Additionally, our automated shipyards in the asteroid belt have produced another 2,000 vessels over the past decade. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. While the Galactic Council thought humanity possessed perhaps 50 military ships, the real number was closer to 2,500. More importantly, every one of those ships was equipped with technology decades ahead of anything the aliens possessed. Admiral Chenwei, what's your assessment of alien military capabilities? Admiral Chun, a stocky woman with calm eyes and steady hands, had spent her career studying alien warfare tactics. Based on our intelligence gathering, the Council species have grown complacent. They haven't fought a real war in over 3 centuries. Their tactics are outdated, their equipment is standardized across all species, and they have no experience fighting an enemy they can't see coming. Patricia smiled for the first time in weeks. Then let's give them an education they'll never forget. Activate all Ghost Ship units. Begin Phase 1 operations immediately. Across the galaxy, vessels that had drifted silent and dark for years began to stir. In the Korthak home system, the stealth ship Vengeance powered up its weapons and targeted the Empire's primary communication relay. In ethereal collective space, 3 human ships surrounded a massive energy harvesting station that powered half their civilization. Near the Silicon Syndicate's industrial worlds, hidden vessels prepared to strike at mining operations that supplied raw materials to dozens of alien species. Captain Rebecca Martinez commanded the Silent Strike, positioned just outside the Hive Confederation's central coordination node. For 2 years, she had watched alien ships come and go from this facility, learning their patterns and routines. The station coordinated the collective consciousness that linked billions of hive minds across dozens of worlds. Destroying it would be like performing a lobotomy on an entire species. All stations report ready, announced her tactical officer. Quantum torpedoes loaded and targeted. Rebecca had read the mission briefings. She knew what humanity faced if they failed to act decisively. The aliens wanted to cage her species, to reduce them to museum specimens kept for entertainment. Every person she had ever loved lived on worlds that the Council wanted to control or destroy. Fire. The quantum torpedo phased through normal space as it traveled toward the station. When it struck, it ignored the facility's shields completely, materializing inside the structure's core and detonating with the force of a small star. The coordination node vanished in a brilliant flash, taking with it the communication network that held the Hive Confederation together. Similar attacks were happening simultaneously across the galaxy. Communication relays exploded, leaving alien species unable to coordinate their responses. Military bases found their defense systems mysteriously failing moments before human warships materialized from nowhere to destroy them. Trade routes that had operated safely for millennia became death traps as invisible predators picked off cargo vessels one by one. On the Great Assembly Station, High Arbiter Zexthal was meeting with his intelligence chiefs when the first reports began arriving. At first, they seemed like isolated incidents. A communication relay in the Outer Rim had suffered a catastrophic failure. A Hive Confederation coordination node had experienced some kind of explosion. Several cargo ships were overdue for their scheduled arrivals. How many incidents are we talking about? Zexthal asked his chief intelligence officer, a nervous Korthak named Vextal. Sir, in the past 6 hours, we've received reports of 47 unexplained equipment failures, 31 missing ships, and 18 facilities going dark without warning. The pattern suggests Vextal hesitated, afraid to voice what they were all thinking. Say it, Zexthal ordered. The pattern suggests coordinated military action, sir. We're under attack. The command chamber erupted in chittering sounds of disbelief. The idea that some unknown enemy could strike at the heart of Council space without being detected was almost inconceivable. Who would dare? Demanded Councillor Veltar, the ethereal collective representative. What species possesses the capability to attack multiple targets simultaneously across such vast distances? The answer came from the chamber's main communication screen as it flickered to life without authorization. Captain Elena Vasquez appeared, sitting in what looked like a military command center. Her uniform was crisp, her bearing confident, and her smile was absolutely terrifying. Hi, Arbiter Zexthal, Elena said pleasantly. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. The alien council members stared in shock. The human ship Determination was supposed to be in hyperspace, still days away from Earth. How was this communication even possible? This is impossible, Zexthal clicked. Human technology cannot penetrate our security systems. Elena's smile widened. You keep saying things are impossible, Arbiter. First you said humanity was too primitive to deserve expansion rights. Then you said we were too dangerous to be allowed among civilized species. Now you say our technology can't match yours. You really should stop making assumptions. Behind Elena, other humans could be seen working at sophisticated control panels. The technology visible in the background was clearly more advanced than anything the Council possessed. What do you want? Veltar demanded, the ethereal's form flickering with agitation. Want? Elena seemed to consider the question. A few hours ago, I would have said we wanted fair treatment, peaceful expansion rights, and mutual respect. But you made it very clear that wasn't possible. So now I want something different. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on Zexthal's compound gaze. I want you to understand exactly how badly you've miscalculated. The communication screen split to show multiple views of destruction across the galaxy. Burning space stations, exploding ships, and devastated military installations filled the display. Each image was time-stamped within the past few hours. In the 6 hours since your council delivered its ultimatum, humanity has destroyed 37% of your military infrastructure, 62% of your communication networks, and eliminated approximately 40,000 of your military personnel. This is not terrorism or piracy, Arbiter. This is war. Councillor Quandris of the Silicon Syndicate, whose rocky form had begun glowing with internal heat, spoke for the first time. Your species numbers only 8 billion. We have populations in the trillions across hundreds of worlds. You cannot possibly hope to defeat us through conventional warfare. Elena's laugh was genuinely amused. Conventional warfare? Counselor, you still don't understand what you're dealing with. Let me show you something interesting. The display changed to show real-time tactical information from across the galaxy. Hundreds of red dots marked alien military assets, while blue dots showed human forces. But the blue dots were appearing and disappearing faster than the alien computers could track them. Those blue dots represent human vessels currently in Council space, Elena explained. Each one is equipped with technology your scientists haven't even theorized yet. Quantum phase weapons that ignore shields, gravitic manipulators that can create artificial black holes, biological weapons tailored specifically for each of your species' genetic weaknesses. The council chamber fell silent as the aliens realized the scope of what they were facing. Hundreds of human ships were operating freely in space they thought was secure, armed with weapons they couldn't defend against. But here's what should really concern you, Elena continued. Everything you've seen so far is just phase one. We wanted to get your attention and demonstrate our capabilities. Phase two begins in 12 hours unless we receive an unconditional surrender from every member species of the Galactic Council. High Arbiter Zexthal's forearms spread in a gesture of defiance. Humans do not dictate terms to the Galactic Council. We will mobilize every ship, every weapon, every arbiter, Elena interrupted quietly. Look at your tactical displays. Zexthal's compound eyes shifted to the holographic projection showing the space around the Great Assembly Station. Dozens of massive warships were materializing from nowhere, their weapons already locked onto the station's critical systems. Each ship was larger and more advanced than anything in the Council's fleet. Those are our diplomacy ships, Elena said conversationally. They're here to ensure that our conversation isn't interrupted by any rash decisions on your part. If you attempt to raise shields, launch fighters, or send any kind of distress signal, they will reduce the station to cosmic dust in approximately 30 seconds. The alien council members looked around desperately, seeking some option that didn't exist. They had insulted humanity, expecting weak protests and eventual submission. Instead, they had awakened a military force that made their own capabilities look primitive by comparison. 12 hours, Elena repeated. Use that time to contact your governments and explain the situation. Humanity is no longer asking for expansion rights. We're taking them. The only question is whether your species survived to see what we build in the territory we claimed. The communication ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Through the viewports, they could see human warships holding position around their station like wolves surrounding prey. High Arbiter Zexthal slumped in his throne, finally understanding the magnitude of his mistake. Humanity hadn't been hiding their primitive nature. They had been hiding their strength. For decades, while the Council dismissed them as irrelevant newcomers, the humans had been preparing for exactly this moment. Get me emergency communications with all member governments, he ordered weakly. Tell them we need to discuss surrender terms. As panic spread through the alien governments, Elena Vasquez sat back in her command chair aboard the hidden facility beneath Earth's surface. Around her, the most advanced military operation in galactic history continued its methodical destruction of everything the Council had built. Phase 2 preparations, she asked Admiral Chun, ready for implementation. Target packages include every major population center, industrial facility, and government installation in Council space. Estimated total casualties in the first wave, 4 billion. Elena nodded. She felt no satisfaction in numbers, only grim determination. The aliens had chosen this path when they decided humanity was too dangerous to exist freely. Now, they would learn what dangerous really meant. Admiral, how long until our stealth ships reach their final positions? 11 hours and 37 minutes. Elena stood up and walked to the main viewport, looking out at the stars that the Council had tried to deny humanity. Soon, those stars would belong to her species, not because they had asked permission, but because they had taken what they needed. Then let's give them 11 hours to make the right choice, she said. After that, we'll make it for them. Stars burn in human fire. President Maria Santos stood in the Oval Office, watching news feeds from across the galaxy on multiple screens. For 36 years, she had served the people of Earth, first as a senator, then as Secretary of Defense, and finally as president. She had negotiated trade agreements, managed economic crises, and guided humanity through its first tentative steps into galactic civilization. Nothing had prepared her for this moment. Madam President, her chief of staff announced from the doorway. General Stone is here for the final briefing. Patricia Stone entered the office, her uniform bearing new insignia that reflected her elevation to Supreme Commander of Human Forces. Behind her came Fleet Admiral James Morrison, a man whose calm demeanor masked one of the most brilliant tactical minds in human history. His promotion from commander to fleet admiral had happened in the past 12 hours, as humanity's hidden military structure finally revealed itself. Status report, General, President Santos said, settling into her chair behind the historic desk. Phase 1 exceeded all expectations, Patricia replied, activating a holographic display that filled the center of the room. We've eliminated 73% of Council military assets, destroyed 91% of their long-range communications, and disabled critical infrastructure on 46 worlds. Alien casualties are estimated at just over 100,000 military personnel. The president nodded grimly. Each of those numbers represented lives lost, beings who had families and dreams just like humans did. But the council had made their choice when they decided humanity was too dangerous to exist. What about civilian casualties? 0 confirmed civilian deaths, Admiral Morrison reported. Our weapons are precise enough to target specific installations without collateral damage. We've been very careful to maintain the moral high ground. Maria felt a small measure of relief. Whatever humanity was becoming in this conflict, they weren't becoming monsters. And the Council's response to our ultimatum? Patricia's expression darkened. Hi, Arbiter Zexthal transmitted a reply 47 minutes ago. They're calling our demands impossible and preparing to fight what they're calling the human rebellion. They still don't understand that this isn't a rebellion, Madam President. This is a conquest. Through the office windows, Maria could see crowds gathering on the White House lawn. Word of the conflict had leaked despite all attempts at secrecy, and humanity was reacting with a mixture of fear, excitement, and pride. For the first time in their species' history, they weren't the underdogs. How long before Phase 2? The president asked. Admiral Morrison consulted his tactical display. 6 hours and 14 minutes. Our stealth fleets are in position around every major council world. The aliens have no idea how close we are to ending this war permanently. Maria stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the people who had elected her to protect them. Admiral, in your professional opinion, what are our chances of achieving total victory without destroying entire species? If they surrender in the next 6 hours? Excellent. They'll lose their political independence and military capabilities, but their populations will survive under human oversight. If they continue to resist... Morrison paused, choosing his words carefully. Our weapons can sterilize planets, Madam President. Dr. Torres has developed biological agents that can target specific genetic markers. We could eliminate hostile species entirely while leaving their worlds intact for human colonization. The casual way he discussed genocide sent a chill down Maria's spine. These were good people, patriots who had devoted their lives to protecting humanity. The fact that they could speak so calmly about exterminating entire species showed how far the Council's threats had pushed them. I want it understood by everyone involved that genocide is not an acceptable option, she said firmly. We're fighting to secure humanity's future, not to become the next galactic tyrants. Understood, Madam President, Patricia replied. But I need you to understand the alternatives. If we show weakness now, if we give the Council any reason to believe they can resist our demands, this war will continue for generations. Our children and grandchildren will grow up fighting the same battles we're fighting today. Maria turned back to face her military commanders. Then we make sure they don't want to fight. How many council worlds are you targeting in Phase 2? Morrison activated a new display showing the galaxy with red markers highlighting selected targets. 47 worlds, including every council species, homeworld, and primary colonies. Each world will be surrounded by our stealth fleets. When Phase 2 begins, we'll demonstrate our planet-killing capabilities on uninhabited worlds first, then demand immediate surrender. And if they still refuse, Patricia's face hardened. Then we start with their least populated worlds and work our way up. Eventually, they'll understand that resistance is futile. Before Maria could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the White House complex. Her chief of staff burst through the office doors, his face pale with excitement. Madam President, we're receiving priority communications from the Great Assembly Station. High Arbiter Zexthal is requesting immediate negotiations. The main display flickered to life, showing the alien council chamber. The scene was chaos. Several alien species were arguing loudly in their native languages, their translation devices struggling to keep up. Council members who had seemed arrogant and dismissive days earlier now looked desperate and afraid. High Arbiter Zexthal stepped forward, his four arms trembling slightly. President Santos, the Galactic Council formally requests a cessation of hostilities while we discuss terms for a peaceful resolution to this conflict. Maria exchanged glances with her military commanders before responding. Arbiter, 48 hours ago, you declared humanity too primitive and dangerous to be allowed expansion rights. You classified us as a restricted species and threatened to destroy any human vessels found in Council space. What exactly has changed your perspective? The aliens' compound eyes seem to focus on something beyond the camera. We have become aware that humanity possesses military capabilities far beyond what our intelligence services had indicated. We may have been hasty in our initial assessment. Admiral Morrison stepped into the camera's view, his new fleet admiral insignia clearly visible. Arbiter, let me clarify the situation for you. In 43 hours, humanity has reduced the Galactic Council from the dominant power in this galaxy to a collection of frightened governments hiding on their homeworlds. Your military is destroyed. Your communications are severed. Your trade routes are controlled by our forces. He gestured to something off-screen, and the display split to show real-time images from across the galaxy. Human warships surrounded alien worlds like sharks circling wounded prey. The vessels were massive, sleek, and clearly more advanced than anything the Council possessed. Every world you can see is currently under siege by human forces, Morrison continued. We have weapons positioned that can crack planets in half or sterilize all life on their surfaces. The only reason your species still exists is because we choose to allow it. Counselor Veltar of the Ethereal Collective materialized beside Zexthal, the energy beings form flickering with distress. Admiral, surely reasonable beings can reach an accommodation. The Council is prepared to offer significant concessions. Counselor, President Santos interrupted, you seem to be under the impression that this is a negotiation. It's not. These are the terms of your surrender. She activated her own holographic display, showing a document that had been prepared by Earth's best legal minds. The Galactic Council will be dissolved immediately. All member species will submit to human oversight and governance. Your military forces will be disbanded and replaced by human peacekeeping units. Your governments will operate under human supervision. The alien council members stared in shock at the scope of humanity's demands. What Santos was describing wasn't a peace treaty. It was the complete subjugation of every species in the galaxy. Furthermore, Santos continued, humanity will establish colonies on any worlds we deem suitable, regardless of previous territorial claims. Your species will be relocated as necessary to accommodate human expansion. Educational systems will be revised to include human history, culture, and values. High Arbiter Zexthal's forearms spread in a gesture of desperate defiance. You cannot be serious. You're talking about enslaving entire civilizations. No, Arbiter Admiral Morrison replied calmly. We're talking about preventing future conflicts. Your species had thousands of years to create a just and peaceful galactic order. Instead, you built an empire based on species supremacy and territorial control. You've proven that you cannot be trusted with power. President Santos leaned forward, her voice carrying the authority of someone who spoke for 8 billion people. The age of alien dominance is over. Humanity will establish a new galactic order based on human values: individual liberty, equal opportunity, and peaceful expansion. Your species will benefit from this transition if you accept it willingly. And if we refuse, Veltar asked, the display changed to show a remote star system where a human vessel was approaching a dead world. As they watched, the ship fired a single weapon that caused the planet's crust to crack and split. Within minutes, the world was reduced to glowing fragments. That was a demonstration, Morrison explained. We can do the same thing to any inhabited world that resists our authority. The choice is yours. The alien council chamber erupted in panic, chittering, clicking, and harmonious sounds as the various species tried to process what they had witnessed. A weapon that could destroy planets was beyond their comprehension, let alone their ability to defend against. Counselor Quandris of the Silicon Syndicate, whose rocky form was glowing bright orange with stress, spoke in a voice like grinding stone. How long do we have to consider your terms? Santos consulted her watch. Phase 2 begins in 5 hours and 37 minutes. At that time, our fleets will demonstrate their capabilities on the least populated worlds of any species that hasn't surrendered. Every hour after that, we'll select more populated targets until you understand that resistance is impossible. This is madness, Zexthal clicked desperately. You're talking about the extermination of entire species. We're talking about consequences, Patricia Stone said, stepping into view for the first time. For 20 years, humanity offered friendship and received contempt. We proposed cooperation and were met with condescension. We requested fair treatment and were classified as a restricted species. You made it clear that you viewed us as a threat to be contained or eliminated. She gestured to the display, showing human fleets surrounding alien worlds. Congratulations, Arbiter. You were right. We are a threat. The difference is that you're no longer in a position to do anything about it. The communication ended, leaving the Alien Council in stunned silence. President Santos turned to her military commanders, the weight of galactic leadership settling on her shoulders. Admiral Morrison, I want hourly updates on Council responses. If any species attempts military action against our forces, authorization is granted to demonstrate our capabilities on their least populated world. Understood, Madam President. General Stone, what's the status of our occupation forces? Standing by on all major human worlds. We can have administrative teams on every council world within 72 hours of their surrender. Our xenobiologists have prepared integration protocols for each species. Santos nodded, then walked back to the window. Outside, the crowds had grown larger. News of humanity's military success was spreading faster than government censors could contain it. For the first time in human history, their species wasn't looking up at the stars with wonder and hope. They were looking down at them with authority. General, do you really believe we can govern an entire galaxy? Patricia joined her at the window. Madam President, 3 days ago the aliens told us we were too primitive to deserve expansion rights. Today, we're dictating surrender terms to civilizations that are thousands of years older than ours. I think we can manage. 3 hours later, the responses began arriving. The Hive Confederation, their collective consciousness shattered by the destruction of their coordination nodes, transmitted an unconditional surrender. The Silicon Syndicate, facing complete economic collapse as their industrial worlds fell under human control, followed within minutes. 1 by 1, the great powers of the galaxy submitted to human authority. the ethereal collective whose energy-based existence made them vulnerable to humanity's gravitic weapons, surrendered after a demonstration that caused 3 of their inhabited energy clouds to dissipate permanently. The Korthak Empire held out the longest. High Arbiter Zexthal continued to broadcast defiant messages, even as human fleets surrounded his homeworld. It wasn't until Admiral Morrison ordered the destruction of Korthak colonies in 3 uninhabited systems that the Empire finally capitulated. When the last surrender was received, President Santos stood once again in the Oval Office, surrounded by the advisors and commanders who had guided humanity through its transformation from galactic newcomer to galactic master. "Status of Phase 2, she asked. "Cancelled," Admiral Morrison reported. "All major council species have submitted unconditional surrenders. Our occupation forces are deploying to their homeworlds now." Santos felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. Humanity had achieved total victory faster than anyone had believed possible. Now came the much harder task of governing a galaxy. "What about Captain Vasquez?" she asked. "I want her here for the transition planning." "The captain is en route to Earth aboard the Determination," Patricia replied. "She should arrive within 6 hours." When Elena Vasquez finally stood in the Oval Office 12 hours later, she looked exhausted but satisfied. The woman who had faced down the Alien Council's insults had become the public face of humanity's victory. "Captain," President Santos said, "I understand you have some thoughts about our next steps." Elena nodded, activating a holographic display that showed the galaxy's new political structure. The aliens spent thousands of years creating a system based on species hierarchy and territorial control. "We need to build something better." The display showed human administrative zones overlaying the traditional alien territories. "I propose we eliminate species-based governance entirely. Instead of alien homeworlds ruling their own kind, we establish human-led administrative districts that include multiple species working together. Integration rather than conquest," Santos mused. "Can it work?" "Madam President, 3 days ago the galaxy's greatest powers dismissed us as primitive warmongers. Today, those same powers are begging us not to destroy them. I think we've proven that humans can accomplish anything we set our minds to." Elena's smile was tired but confident. "Besides, we've already done the hard part. We've shown them that resistance is futile. Now we just need to show them that cooperation is rewarding." As the meeting broke up and plans were made for humanity's new galactic government, Elena stood once more at the window, looking out at the stars. The same stars that had seemed so distant and hostile just days before now belonged to her species. The galaxy had insulted humanity, called them too dangerous to exist freely among civilized species. They had been right about the dangerous part, but wrong about everything else. Humanity wasn't just another species seeking its place among the stars. They were the stars' new masters, and they would reshape the galaxy according to human values of freedom, opportunity, and growth. The age of alien dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun.